All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mindgasms podcast. Very excited to get to talk to, I think I might say your name incorrectly here. Uh,
Everybody does.
is
So
it, is it, is it, is it Daniele Bolelli? Is that how you pronounce
pretty
it?
damn close. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Daniele. Close enough.
Okay. And, of course, a lot of people know him, the awesome historian. And, yeah, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself there?
Sure, man. I moved to US from Italy back in 1992, so it's a really long time, but somehow my accent is still here. And let's see, over the last about 16, 17 years, 17 years by now, I've been teaching in college. I've been teaching history, a couple of different universities in Southern California. I've written 4 books. I host a couple of podcasts, The Drunken Taoist and History on Fire. Um, those are some of the first things that come to mind.
All right. So, yeah, I guess we could start off if you want to. I found your History on Fire episodes on the one about the that gladiator rebellion
Yeah.
during the Roman Empire. I found that one to be really interesting too. And I don't know if you've seen it, but I saw this there's this show called Spartacus that's kind of like the show version of the movie. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that show, and I was like comparing your episodes to the show when I was listening to it, and it was fun to learn like what's historically accurate and what's historically inaccurate, but either way it's like a fascinating story.
Yeah, Spartacus was fun. He's like the most explicit sex and violence you can watch on TV without crossing into straight up porn. It was pretty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oddly enough, actually, they didn't even do such a bad job historically. Like, they are actually better than most of the Spartacus rendition they have done before, where
Oh, okay.
they tweak the story a lot. I mean, they still tweak the story, don't get me wrong, but overall, not that bad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I thought it was cool too that that you said you did those episodes because of that story that you started telling on Joe Rogan's podcast about that one part in the story where when the Romans finally quelled the rebellion, they crucified one of the gladiators, one like every 200 yards or something like that.
30 yards between
30 yards.
Moscow and Rome. So all in all is like 6,000 people stretched out over 125 miles or something like that.
Wow. I mean, like, can barely even imagine that, man.
Yeah.
That's
6,000 crucified people. That's a little hardcore. That's
yeah.
when they really want to send a message.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one thing that that I know you've talked about before in your podcast, and one thing that I like about Dan Carlin in his podcast too is that the their stories of history, they're so filled with like treachery and betrayal and violence and brutality stuff. It's like Game of Thrones, but it's shit that actually happened.
Right, totally. That's exactly what it is. We actually did at one point. I did an episode comparing Game of Thrones to history, where with a guy who is running a History of Westeros podcast that's all about Game of Thrones. So we did a compare and contrast between like some of the crazy stuff you find in the Game of Thrones books and the TV show, and then how much of the kind of parallels that exist in history for that stuff.
Oh, cool. I haven't heard that episode. I should check it out.
I think is, if I don't remember wrong, is episode 29. I called it, of course, with the glorious quote from Tyrion Lannister: "I drink and I know things."
Oh yeah. Oh, Tyrion's my favorite character.
He's awesome. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we did the whole episode on that kind of idea of like how for every weird thing that you find in Game of Thrones, you find something just as weird as weirder in history. And so, yeah, there's a lot of historical inspiration there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Isn't it like partially based on real history in the first place or something like that?
That's what it is. It's like you can see that R. R. Martin just spent a lot of time really learning from, studying history and using it to and using it to kind of fodder for the Game of Thrones story.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's really interesting.
That's wild.
Yeah, I love Game of Thrones too, especially like I like the books more than the show because they get more into the like the characters and they get more in detail and stuff like that. But yeah, like I mean, there's a reason why Game of Thrones was so popular, of course.
Yeah,
And
pretty
yeah,
wild.
the other episode series of yours that I wanted to talk about a little bit is that the Conquest of Mexico one with Cortez when he conquered was it the Aztecs, I think?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly. This is the clash between the Spaniards and the Aztecs in the 1500s in modern New Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's such a fascinating story. Like the way that they took over and the like when you were describing the way the wars were fought too, and the way they fought each other and how they fought in different ways, and the like the Aztecs were confused by the cavalry because they hadn't seen it before and that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, if you've never seen horses, they definitely takes a while to get adjusted.
Yeah, yeah. Like what were some actually for both that one and the story of the Gladiator Rebellion,
Huh?
what were some of your favorite parts to research when you were researching for those?
I mean, a lot of the research process is a bit painful because you're reading through books that are not necessarily engaging. They are kind of dry, and you have to dig for sort of those nuggets that are in there. So you're, shoveling a lot of mud, and then, oh, that's a nice gold nugget. Put it aside.
I remember you talking about that before, yeah.
That's the process, right? I mean, the process. I wouldn't say none, but probably very, very few of the books I read are actually enjoyable to read for the sake of putting together an episode. The goal is to take a lot of dry material and then put it together in a narrative that's not dry and that's fun and engaging. So,
Right.
a lot of times you're there and you're like, oh man, it's kind of boring, this is tedious, and you're like, oh, that's a good one. I
Oh yeah.
boring. And so you get that makes it like there are some crazy stories. At one point, like Spartacus, when the Romans built this wall to block him off, to kind of keep him outside of Italy, and he used the bodies of all the dead Romans that he had killed, stuck them up against the wall to be able to climb over the wall. That's insane. That's just some pretty wild stuff right there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. So, oh yeah, so I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about Taoism, or is it pronounced Taoism? I've heard it pronounced both different ways.
Both ways. It's
Both?
I mean, it's technically it's kind of like between a D and a T, so it's sort of like close enough.
Oh, okay.
The
Um, yeah, so like it's a really interesting concept to me. I mean, I'm only mildly familiar with it. Like I think I told you, I read the Tao Te Ching and I've watched some Alan Watts videos, but I'm not that familiar with it. But I like the that yin and yang symbol too. That I actually look at a yin and yang symbol when I meditate because
Mhm,
it's such an interesting concept to me. Though those sorts of ideas in Taoism.
definitely. Yeah, Taoism to me is interesting because unlike most philosophies or religions that you have to be a member to actually practice it, you could be practicing Taoism without even knowing because you don't need to even know what Taoism is to apply its ideas. Because the ideas are very universal, They are, you get these ideas that are applicable to all situations, to all times. They are not specific to one particular school of thought. They are mainly things that you learn from life. So to me, learning Taoism is funny because you read it and you're like, oh, I guess we call it Taoism, but it's like stuff that you may have thought already, or it makes intuitive sense, or it's really revealing some of the principles that are at the roots of how the universe works.
Yeah, like I like the like the ideas that there are these opposites like black and white or yin and yang or masculine and feminine or light and darkness, but they're opposites, but they're also kind of part of each other, and the lines between them kind of blur, which is like that's kind of an intuitive aspect too, like you were talking about, I would say, like just for life in general.
Yeah, very few things are really that black and white in anything in life. Mm, Hardly anything is. And so the way Taoism conceive of duality is not so much good versus evil, is this idea that there are these two opposite energies, male, female, light and dark, cold and hot, that kind of duality. So it's not that one is good and one is bad, they're just part of a continuum. And every situation, the solution to every situation is found in the correct balance of yin and yang, which is constantly changing. You cannot apply just, oh, it's a 50-50 deal. No. In one situation, you need to have an energy that's way more assertive, and so you need to be primarily yang with a tiny bit of yin. In another way, assertiveness would not work at all, and you need to use a much more soft, mellow approach that would be more yin based. And it's always a balance, but rather than being a static balance, kind of like, okay, I'll just avoid all the extremes and walk down the middle path, is a dynamic balance. It's more like surfing that, depending on which way the wave is going, you need to lean heavily to the right or heavily to the left or somewhere in the middle. And you're constantly shifting. And I guess the Taoist skill is in reading the context, reading the situation, and figure out what the appropriate balance is for that context and that situation. And I think that's the exact opposite of being dogmatic. People, they find something that works, and then they want to apply to all situation and all context. And it's like, well, that's nice and all, but that thing that worked that one time. It's useful to keep that in mind because it may work in another context, but not necessarily. People are different. You cannot communicate the same way with everybody. The same message that will click with one person would have to be very much tailored for a different person for them to click. There are 10,000 things in life where rarely things are that, like, you rarely can apply the same thing exactly the same in all situations. Even if you raise kids, some kids need 2 years, they need more of a firm hand and they need a little more discipline. Other kids, you stifle them if you put too much discipline. You need to give them more free reign. And it's like, and that skill is being able to read it. What is that? Not in the abstract a kid needs, what does this kid need? What's the correct way to approach this person, this situation, this context? And so it's kind of a talent. It's like cooking, It's like you can follow the recipe and you're not gonna screw up too bad, but to really put in the fine tunes is something that no chef can teach somebody else because you learn it by experience. There's that one moment where it's like now, not 40 seconds from now, not 30 seconds ago. It's right now. That's a skill. That's something you develop with experience and awareness.
Yeah, totally. Those both of those analogies of surfing and cooking are very good ones. Like l- like maybe in Buddhism, for example, you could say that they're all about balance in a sense, at least certain types of Buddhism.
Mhm.
But the but if you want to just have like balance in all things all the time, like you were talking about, sometimes it's better to go more towards one extreme than the other, like you were talking about, and it depends on the situation too. So it sounds like a much more pragmatic way of going through life in
Mhm.
that sense too. And yeah, like you were saying too, like it depends on not just the situation, but the individual too. Like what works for this person might not work for this person. And I like the aspect of it about being against dogma too, because they're like what I've kind of understood more recently and just been learning more about lately is that there are lots of different ways at looking at different mythologies and religions, and each person has their own individual way in that sense.
Hmm.
But the a really common aspect of religions that most people seem to choose to follow is to follow these dogmatic aspects of it,
Yeah.
like like I have some Christian friends, for example, who aren't really dogmatic at all about their Christianity, but then most other people I know, they might be dogmatic at least about a few aspects, like especially if they're people I know who aren't really like critical thinkers or anything like that. They'll think like Jesus is the only way to God, or Jesus is the only way to heaven, or anything like that. And that kind of shit is where it just gets annoying for me.
Yeah, and people do it with everything. Whether religion, every single field of experience, people like to get dogmatic for the simple reason that it's reassuring. The word dogma has a bad rep, of course, for good reasons. But at the same time, when you look at how much people actually love dogma, even though they don't say it, but in reality, what they do, it's obvious. It makes you feel reassured. There's something that you can always fall back on. You believe that it's always true in all situations. That appeals to our laziness. It appeals to not having to work so damn hard to figure out each situation, each moment, each person, each one is a lot easier than the other. Now it's a fake easier because in reality you're just going for the wrong solution half of the time. You're not really. It's a shortcut that doesn't really take you to the destination. But it's appealing for that reason because there's that sense of safety. It's always there. You can always rely on it, at least in theory. In reality, not that much, but that's the theory.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking while you were talking about that, about how you said that this applies to everything, and it really does too. Like people get ideological about everything, really. And like for with politics, for example, you could say like one person could get dogmatic about being a liberal. So liberals have everything figured out, those fucking conservatives, they're fucking retards. Or a conservative could could be like, conservatives have everything figured out, those fucking liberals are goddamn retards. Or libertarians get that way about liberals and conservatives too.
Absolutely. I had I was reading some reviews for Dan Carlin's political podcast, Common Sense, and it was hilarious because I mean most people like him, rightfully so, because he's awesome. But like the critical reviews were funny because you would get these. One guy comes on and is like, "Oh, he makes it sound like he's this nuance thinker, but really he's a closet conservative who's just trying to push this." The next review. Oh, he makes it sound like he's the one singer, but really he's a crazy liberal who's out to push his agenda. Like, holy hell, it's like people are stuck in that mindset where unless you are 110% on board with my way, then you're the enemy. Then you're on the other side. And there are only two sides, right? It's like if you're not with this group, then you must be with that group. There's no idea that maybe it's a little more complex than that. That nope, it's like it's either this or that. It's black or white. That
Yeah.
mentality is the exact opposite of Taoism. It's this very black and white as opposite forces. There's a line drawn in the sand. Two opposites are fighting one another, and you either pick one or the other. Whereas Taoism tell you the exact opposite. Tell you no, they are not fighting each other. It's you have to figure out the harmony of the opposites. No, you don't have to pick one or the other. It's always both. You have to figure out what the balance is, but it's always both sides. So in many ways, Taoism is like the perfect antidote to that dualistic thinking, that black and white mentality that leads toward dogma and other unhealthy things.
Yeah, definitely. I would say so. And it's interesting how like how you're just talking about how ideological people get about politics too. Like I think isn't I don't know, I guess hasn't Dan Carlin said that I think you might have heard him say before that he's a liberal, but I mean it if I did, even if regardless of whether I did or not, like if you, especially on his Common Sense podcast where he talks more about politics than anything else, it really seems like he's pretty much centrist, I would say. Like he gives equal merit and just tries to carefully consider any opinions, whether they're liberal or conservative or anything in between or something like that. So just saying that he's like a closet liberal or closet conservative is really funny.
Well, that's what people who are stuck in a dualistic mentality will do. Unless you're perfectly fitting in our camp, then it means you're on the other camp. There are only two choices. There's no other. And it's a very simplistic view. It's kind of like if you think about the whole history of the Cold War. That's how it was. You're either with the Soviet Union or we are with the United States. There's nothing in between. You're either a full-fledged communist or you are in favor of the more hardcore conservative version of capitalism. Nothing. It's like
Yeah.
that's forcing a really bad dichotomy on reality when it really doesn't work. It's most people don't fit so neatly in those camps at all, and this desire to push them in those camps is annoying in all situations, whether we're talking politics, whether we're talking anything else, really.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I've been learning about more recently in the last couple months or so, or maybe a little longer than that, is that perhaps communism isn't quite as evil as I've been led to believe. Because I had this like really extreme mindset, like I guess kind of pro capitalism and anti communism for a while, but now I'm like I end up having with almost everything. Was I guess you could say have more of a Taoist approach to it, which is capitalism is good in a lot of ways. It has many pros, it also has many cons. You could say the same thing about communism, really. Like history shows the clear fucking flaws with communism, like all the bad stuff that has happened in communist countries, especially in Russia, like you said. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the ideas within communism themselves are they're completely ineffective. It doesn't mean that I'm saying that I agree with people
Sure.
who are self-proclaimed communists who say no, communism just hasn't been tried yet, man. It just means that maybe Marx had some good ideas.
I think that's the problem, that people get really ideological about these things. Talking, people get lost into isms. This is a good one or this is a bad one. It's like, how about we just focus on specific issues? How about we test things out? Because most things are on a continuum. There is no such thing as complete free market capitalism. And we know how bad it gets when it's like the hardcore totalitarian communism. Reality is always, I mean, in US is not even a purely capitalist society. If you look at Northern Europe, they consider it kind of socialist, but also kind of not. There's also a bunch of capitalists. It's like most everything is on a balance. It's not really that either full system one way or full system the other. So the question is, what's the right balance? Where exactly is the good balance between the more socialist approach and the more capitalist one? Well, that's up for discussion, and I think it changes depending on which country you're talking about. It changes depending, and I think the problem is people become fanboys of one system or another, and then they are blind to trying out things. It's like, to me, there are 50 states in the US. If people feel really strongly about it, why don't you set up experiments? One state can go more on a socialist direction, one state can go in a more free market one. We come back in 5 years and we see the results. Oh, turns out that this looks a little more promising. Okay, let's try that. You learn, and the whole point stops being so damn ideological. Rather than having to embrace pure faith in a system, you try things out and you use what works and you leave beside what doesn't work. It's a very kind of like mixed martial art type of thing where it's like, karate is the way. No, shut up. Judo is the best. It's like, how about we try things out? And hey, turns out some judo moves are great. And actually, there are some karate things that work. How about you just take the best from all systems and mix it together? That seemed like so much healthier, and yet people don't do it because they are invested in their flag, their system, their ideology, their it becomes part of their identity. It's like suddenly if you acknowledge that there's one good thing that can come from this other system, you're somehow betraying your pure identity into this other system. And it's like, when did human beings decide that they need to become slaves to systems as opposed to using systems to make life better? Why do you have to become the defender of an ideological system? That's just dumb.
Yeah, exactly. Very well said. And that's like almost it's a much more pragmatic approach,
Yeah.
and almost like more of a scientific approach too, because you're gonna like let's try this experiment here and see if it works. Okay, let's try this other experiment, and then we'll gradually feel out what works. And that's I'm glad that you brought that up too, and mixed martial arts, because that reminds me of mixed mental arts that we were going to talk a little bit, because you've been on the mixed mental arts podcast, of course, and talked to Brian Callen and Hunter Motz, and basically they try to have that sort of mindset, like let's try to figure out these ideas and try different things and use what works for the given situation, and use a different system over here than what works for here, depending on whether the circumstances are different. And that's why I ended up joining mixed mental arts and participating in lots of the chats. And I would say I've gotten to know Hunter, and he's an awesome guy too. So yeah, it's basically like you could almost say that the one of the main goals of mixed mental arts in a way is to just kind of take a Taoist approach to figuring out a lot of these issues.
Totally. It's very much that good old Bruce Lee approach. Bruce Lee had this four-part system of his idea of how he approaches things, where he would say, there was that whole, like a whole element of his system was this idea of absorb what is useful and reject what is useless. You set out there, you experiment, you try things out. Once you do that, you take the stuff that works, you reject the stuff that doesn't, and you make it your own thing. That's it seems so simple. Like it's like, well, how else would you be? I mean, of course, that's just the foundation of just free thinking of anybody who's not a complete slave to an ideology. And yet, it's funny how saying something that should be actually kind of obvious, like if there's any fault in that idea, is that it's not the most original thing you've ever heard. And yet, the problem is it is original, considering that most people never even dream of going that route, and instead they stick to their ideological guns and nothing else. I mean, Dan Carlin was saying the same thing. He was talking about people praising him, saying, "Oh, you are such a open-minded thinker. You are doing something so refreshing." And he's like, "What's so refreshing about considering all viewpoints before I make up my mind? I mean, it's like it should be the most basic thing that every. I mean, I appreciate the compliment, thanks and all, but everybody should do it. It shouldn't be the mark of, oh, what a great thinker you are. It's like it's pretty damn basic. It only seems refreshing and amazing because even something that's so damn basic, so few people actually use it. That is the problem. So, the bar is set really low. It doesn't really take much to be above it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
It's
It's
unfortunate
unfortunate.
that more people don't try to practice that, because yeah, I mean, like you said, it seems obvious, but the like people get we get so attached to our ideas, and the important thing to remember, I think, is that we all get that way about particular sets of ideas from time to time. Basically, one of the things that brought me to mixed mental arts, I would say, is that I was a militant atheist for a long time, and I thought I had this idea about myself that, oh, now I am immune to ideology because I know that religion is evil and causes all the world's problems. And then I gradually kind of started to figure out, hey, I kind of know some religious people, and they don't seem like that. It seems like the religion their religion kind of actually helps them make them better people and that kind of stuff. And And so I gradually figured out through just just fucking chilling the fuck out about religion, basically, and also learning from Brian Callen and Hunter Motz on mixed mental arts about the work of people like Jonathan Haidt and David Sloan Wilson, who basically showed that militant atheists replace faith in God or religion with faith in rationality.
Sure.
But scientifically speaking, according to more recent work that has been done, contrary to the popular misconception, you can't like think rationally and separate it from your emotions. Like emotion and rationality are always linked. So that's another thing that led to me dropping the militant part of my atheism.
No, completely. I think like people can create an identity and create a dogma around anything, literally around anything. That's why, for example, when I teach courses in history of religions, and the potential for things to get ugly is high because people are really sensitive when it comes to religion. But one of the reasons why it never happens pretty much is because on day one, what I tell them is, look, stop thinking in terms of labels. Christianity, there are 30,000 denominations of Christianity. There are gay Christians and Christians who want to burn gay at the stake. There are super liberal Christians and super conservative. The only thing they all have in common is they all think Jesus is cool. That's it. Other than that, they disagree on pretty much every topic there is. So stop generalizing. Stop this idea that the Christian believed. It's like, shut up. No, they Christians. Yes, some do and some don't. Same thing apply to everything. It's like labels are very misleading. They are perfect for creating stereotypes, but you can apply to everything. Forget religion. When people talk about feminism, some feminists, what they mean by feminist is they just believe men and women should have equal rights. Well, that's pretty basic, right? That's kind of like most everybody who's not a complete freak would agree with that.
If you use that definition, then I'm a feminist, and
Not
probably
right.
lots
That
of
makes
people are.
perfect sense. Other versions are super batshit crazy, man-hating kind of feminism. There's everything in between. So this idea that anytime we start making statements generalizing, the feminists are out to no qualify that. There are 3 gazillion feminists who are completely different from one another. So let's not. Same thing with liberals and conservatives, same thing with different religious groups and things with everything. You can make a point about, the majority of so and so today or in this country, or sure, you can make those more generalized points, definitely. But when you stretch, this is mostly true, this is absolutely true, that's when you have a problem.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's a like basically the more I learn about just in general and about any particular topic that I get into, the more I basically eventually come to that sort of mindset. Like maybe I'll start off leaning more towards one side of an argument than the other, but then by the time I've learned about it some more, even if my opinion is pretty similar from the way it was at the start, I usually can kind of understand where people on the other side of the argument are coming from, at least. Like even if my mind doesn't change that much, I can kind of try to understand their perspective.
Totally, absolutely. And which is important to have any kind of dialogue. Otherwise, you're just preaching to the choir.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's I find it funny too that like how ideological people get about Trump, because it makes me want to make a video called pro Trumpers and anti Trumpers think the same way. because
That's
there are people who are so pro Trump that they can't find any fault in anything he ever does, and then there are people who are so anti Trump that they think he's both literally mentally retarded and literally conspiring with his Nazi buddies to make America a Nazi state.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you find yourself thinking that a person or an idea or something, there, everything about it is perfect or everything about it is evil, slow down a second. I mean, I can probably find, give me the most horrible ideologies ever. And I'm sure that they got a couple of things right. You know what I mean? Which doesn't justify the horrendous other things that they went by. But, you can acknowledge, hey, you know what? During fascism, trains did arrive on time. They were pretty good with that. They were horrible in just about every conceivable other way. Credit where credit is due. And if they do three good things, you say, okay, those three things are good. The other 300 are horrible. But, those three things I'm down with.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like that makes me think of the worst example that people usually think about, which is Nazis.
Mhm.
And like I mean, you obviously probably know a lot more about this than me, but it seems like at the time during Hitler's rise to power, given all the other stuff that was happening in the political landscape, he actually provided a useful service for people. Like he was, if you look at it, Hitler's speeches, which you can still watch on YouTube, he basically mostly seems to use language about like bringing people together and solving the country's problems and
Oh,
stuff like that. And if you read Mein Kampf too, for example, you can see how he grew up as a loner, and he was eat his lunches alone, and he wanted to be an artist, but his father didn't want him to, and his father was an asshole to him, and his mother didn't do anything about it. So none of that at all excuses anything that Hitler did at all, but it
sure.
kind of just provides you with some context for how he became such a fucking monster.
Totally. And I think it's important both to understand why people are the way they are, as well as acknowledge that, hey, maybe I disagree. Like, for example, with Nazism, the solutions are overwhelmingly bad, right? What Nazism has done is pretty terrible. But if you don't understand what pushed millions of Germans toward Nazism, and not just stupidly pushed, like there were legitimate issues there. The Treaty of Versailles had screwed them over. Their economy was in shambles. They had 3 gazillion problems. And so they were looking for something. They were looking for the guy who would say, let's make Germany great again, kind of thing. And Hitler did it very well. Now, his solutions were pretty awful, but there were some real problems that needed to be addressed that nobody had an answer to. Hitler's answer was also horrible, but at least, the reason why people fell for it is because he looked like the strong guy who would have an answer to a problem that no one else is tackling well. And so, of course, people go for it. Again, people mistake understanding for justifying. Just because you say, "Oh, I understand why he became the way he was," doesn't mean you don't put a bullet in his head. Just mean you understand it. Then you can also still act the way you do. People have this idea that sometimes if you start understanding somebody, you're really providing an alibi. It's like, no, you're still a human being who makes choices and there are consequences for those choices. Just because there's a rational reason for why you're ended up the way you are, doesn't mean that the behavior you take are to be justified no matter how horrible they are. There are certain lines that you don't cross, and when you cross them, regardless of what bad things happen to you or you are abused or whatever, well, I get it. That's sad. You still cross a line you shouldn't have. You still got a bullet in the head. That's just how it is. There's certain things from which there is no coming back from.
Yeah, definitely. That's that's why I think Joe Rogan has a joke on one of his specials where he's talking about using a time machine,
Yeah.
and if people could choose one spot to go back in time in a time machine, fucking everyone would go back to like take a shit on Shitler's head, and and at one point you would go back in the time machine and he would just be covered in a giant fucking mountain of shit because so many people would do that.
I saw there was an hilarious meme. There was a picture of Hitler with like, why do time travelers keep trying to kill me? I'm just an artist. And it was Hitler in like 1914 or something, where it's like, what's with this?
Oh, that'd be so hilarious.
Uh,
Yeah, it's interesting how people get about that. I didn't even know until fairly recently, when I took a history of World War II class. I think it was last year or the year before,
Mm.
that Hitler modeled his fascism after, or like his political ideology that became Nazism, I guess, after Mussolini's Italian fascism, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's funny how those, that was a period of popular dictators, Mussolini and Hitler and the whole Japanese government system. There were never mind in Russia, same thing with communist dictators. And it's funny how that thing seems to keep coming up, like human beings, despite the fact that we say that we don't like dictators, really do like dictators. They find something appealing in dictatorial authoritarian figures. Because the reality is that lots of people are insecure and they need a father figure to tell them everything is going to be okay, son. Just do what needs to be done, follow the program, and it will all be taken care of. It's so appealing. I mean, even today, if you look at like a bunch of world leaders, there are some, if they are not outright dictators, they're pretty close to that, that, or at least the appeal is the same kind of appeal of like, I'm the strong man who's going to take care of you all. I'm not a wimp like my opponents. We are going. And that stuff, politically, you see it. You see it with, I mean, I've seen the success of some public figures writing books and things who are clearly appealing to that same demographic, clearly appealing to, I'm your father figure who's going to give you the basics of life and pat you on the back kind of thing. It's something that so many humans seem to need. I guess there are lots of shitty fathers out there, and so people need some surrogate father figure because their real father sucked. That's my guess.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. Like there, like I find arguments for anarchism interesting. Like people like Michael Malice, for example, when they make arguments about it. But I mean, again, I mean, I'm not an expert on politics or anything like that. But it seems to me like complete anarchism wouldn't be that effective, like partially because of what you were talking about. Like some people would probably be fucking great with anarchism and they would treat other people well and stuff like that, but some people, they want that powerful leader, and they want people to do things, to take care of shit for them and to take care of them. And I mean, when people get out of control as dictators, like Hitler, like we were talking about, or I mean, like even perhaps like someone who's willing to do something ruthless, but isn't necessarily like fucking at least borderline evil, like Hitler was, or something like that. It seems like sometimes they even serve a valuable purpose to society in a way. Like I made this short video recently, based off of the quote of the. Have you seen the season one of that show, True Detective?
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. Oh, I love that show, like especially season one and the character Rust in that show. I just made this short video called based off of one of his quotes where he says, "The world needs bad men.
Mm.
They keep other men from the door." And I talked a little bit about how you could easily interpret that as like people getting out of control and becoming like someone like Frank Underwood on House of Cards, who's just a fucking psychopath who uses power for his own personal gain. But
Yeah.
it seems sometimes, like within the context of the way Russ talks about it on that show, how if you're aware that you're like a person who's capable of doing ruthless shit to other people, you can put that nature in yourself to good use by becoming a cop. To like on the show, it's cops who are using those sorts of skill sets to literally catch a serial killer. So
Hmm.
that can be useful to society sometimes, I think.
Totally. No, I agree completely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's oh, I mean, it's interesting that you've seen True Detective too. So uh what do you think about like the philosophy of the character Rust on that show? Because especially the first time I saw that, because I think I'm kind of like naturally pessimistic. I agreed with like 95% of what he said, but since I've seen it like two or three times now, and I've learned a lot more about philosophy and psychology since then, I've I agree with like less of what he says, because I can see that a lot of his really negative mindset about life comes from the fucked up life that his character has had. Like his daughter dies, and then he divorces his wife, and he gets addicted to drugs, and he goes undercover in narco and becomes a drug addict, and all this terrible shit happens to him. So what do you think about him on that show?
And the thing to me is that it's like, yeah, life is rough. There's no argument there. There are a lot of existential conditions of life that are extremely rough. Once we acknowledge that, though, either find a way to still make it where you can be happy within the existential harsh conditions that life presents, or shoot yourself. It's like the whole life is hard and terrible and rough, pessimism. It's like, why are you still talking? We're done. It's like, if you have established that it's so bad, why haven't you checked out already? And I don't mean it in a fuck you, I don't want to listen to you complaining. I'm just saying, like, draw the logical conclusion from what you're saying. Otherwise, it's just like, if your avoidance of suicide is based on laziness, or just, it's like, that's not a good reason. It's like, you should want to be alive. It's like, what makes you want to get up in the morning? And I understand everybody goes through rough patches when there are the times when you don't are not so sure why you're getting up in the morning. So I'm not saying, you're having a bad day, go shoot yourself, but at the same time, it's like, at some point you need to figure out a way out. Otherwise you're just going by inertia. And so
Yeah.
to me, it's like, as a philosophy of life, having this super negative outlook, it doesn't make sense. It's like, that's a philosophy of death. It's not a philosophy of life. It's like, if that's the conclusion that you reach and you feel they are done looking, why are you still around? It's like, I don't quite get that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like I remember on the show, the character Marty asked him that question, like, why do you even get out of bed in the
Yeah.
morning? And he says, well, I like the Constitution for suicide, but really it's just my programming. But like like you're saying, it doesn't sound fun to go through life that way. Like that's why for me, for example, like I said, I kind of seem to have pessimistic tendencies, but in more recent years, what I've gradually figured out is that, yeah, I can easily see the bad side of things, but I don't want to go through life living my life that way, because it's not fun, and it's not very useful to me to just go through life just despairing all the time. I'd rather try to see the positive side of things, and then it helps me have a more realistic perspective, and it helps me thrive in life a lot more.
And speaking of dualism, on that topic, half of the time you hear people who are either like the happy cheerleaders of everything is for the best, everything is wonderful, and it's like, no, motherfucker, it's not. There are a lot of terrible things that happen. There's a lot of stuff in life that's not fun or wonderful or even useful. And or they turn into the opposite. If they start going that route, then they're like, oh, everything is doom and gloom. There's no hope. It's all terrible. And it's like, yeah, but ease up a little. There's also champagne and strawberries. There's also good stuff in life. There's also, and again, it becomes very either all or nothing. Either you're the happy cheerleader who's completely in denial about the roughness that life presents, or you are the ultra pessimistic, dark, negative person. It's like, neither one is useful. One, because it's fake, and the first time that life slaps you around, unless you're a complete master on denial, you'll come to your senses that it's not that pretty. And the other one is like, yeah, maybe you're right, but what's the point? Shoot yourself at this point. To me, it's like, even in that, I'm interested in realistic optimism. Acknowledging the fact that there are a lot of terrible, harsh things that happen in life, and try to find a way to be happy in spite of that, in spite of the fact that that exists and it exists. That to me is a little more of a real approach. The other two are ideological again. It's like trying to put on a all white or all black blinder on that you perceive reality through.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, exactly. And like you can get too positive, like you were saying, like you were saying too, like that. like both of those extremes annoy the shit out of me
Mhm.
personally sometimes now. Like, oh, everything is amazing. No, it's not amazing. Life is good sometimes, but sometimes it's also bad. But then if you get to the other opposite end of the spectrum, like you like you were saying, it can just be like, oh, the world is a disease.
Yeah,
We're all just gonna die.
totally. There's a quote by this guy I really like, Ikkyu Sojun. He was a Zen guy from the 1400s who says, "Throw me into hell, and I'll find a way to enjoy it."
That's an awesome quote.
I dig it. It's not
Yeah.
denying that there is some real harshness out there, but it's saying, okay, those are shitty cards to have, but I'll play them in the best I can, and hopefully I'll find a way that's I'll still find a good way to play them, despite the fact that they are horrible cards.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to approach life, I think.
Yeah, because otherwise you get the people who try to convince you that when you are handed shitty cards, no, really, it's a gift because you learn more. It's like, shut up, these are bad cards. And at the same time, you got the people like, oh, these are bad cards. It's the end of it all. Why am I so unlucky? And it's like, well, the game is still going. So unless you decide to check out, find a way to play them well. Yeah, it sucks where you're at, but it doesn't mean the cards don't determine the game. The
Yeah.
cards influence the game. That's a very big difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well put. That reminded me of politics again, because like people have this mindset that that a lot of people anyway seem to have this mindset that either Trump is going to destroy the world or he's bringing us to a new golden age. And it seems more likely that, I mean, uh, I'm not that convinced overall that Trump being president is that different from what it would have been like if Hillary Clinton was president, and even not that different from when Obama was president.
The thing that I tend to, because for the most part, I agree. I mean, I find politicians of all stripes who have a chance of winning office pretty awful across the board. The one thing that I notice is that generally speaking, when it comes to environmental issues, Democrats are pretty bad, but Republicans are infinitely worse. And
Yeah, that seems true. Yeah.
that's one of those that tend to bug me because I see, not that I see that one side is good, nowhere close. Democratic policies on the environment are terrible, but Republican policies about the environment are terrible to the 10th power. They are just so bad, it's like almost stereotypical how bad it is. And so
Yeah.
that's usually the one of the things that tend to bug me the most, where I'm just like, this is more than, yeah, Clinton would bomb a bunch of countries, Trump would bomb a bunch of people, that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, I get it. That's what they are all going to do. Some things, though, they definitely rub me the wrong way.
So would you say your biggest problem with Trump was him trying to dismantle the EPA?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even just Trump. Like across the board, Republican environmental policies are just awful. Democratic ones are unsatisfying for sure. They are not steering toward a good course. They are just going toward a bad course less fast and in less dramatic fashion. It's kind of like Democrats drive the train toward destruction at 60 miles an hour. Republicans drive the train toward destruction at 180 miles an hour. Like, it's not that one is doing something great. It's just one is less awful than the other.
So, how so in that respect? Like what,
Yeah, I mean, just
based on what sort of things that the
sure.
Democrats and the Republicans do?
Um, Both Democrats and Republicans tend to be sold out to business interests. When it comes to environmental things, Republicans more so. I don't know if it's a matter of Democrats have more of a pro environmental lobby pushing them or what the reasons are. But the fact is, there tend to be a bit more environmental protections and laws setting aside the land and making sure that stuff doesn't get wrecked left and right under Democratic administration that there are under Republican ones. Um, Again, usually those laws I find them far from satisfying, but with the lack of those laws is downright tremendously bad. So usually what I see with pretty much across the board. Like I can't think of one time when I saw a Republican. I mean, okay, maybe under Nixon there were a couple of decent ones when it comes to the environment. Other than that, you have to go back that far to find something even remotely decent when it comes to Republican ones and the environment.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's true, I would say. And I mean, like, in me saying all this, I'm not trying I know I kind of said that earlier, but I'm not trying to say that I'm all like pro Trump or anything like that. Like there's certainly lots of things that he has done that I don't like.
No, and in fact, but I agree. It's like some things it's kind of on par for politicians who are in the White House. When's the last time you saw a president that you like? Yeah, good luck. Can't think of too many examples of people I actually liked. There are some that are less awful than others. That's about it. But in terms of fitting it like there's a clear light and darkness there, no, there isn't. There are different degrees of crap.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, which doesn't exactly make you excited. It's kind of like vote for so and so is at least 15% less crappy than the other one. It's like not exactly a slogan you want to get excited about, but still 15% is 15%. Sometime you'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like we were talking about earlier, like that doesn't like just understanding that in general politicians aren't going to be that different overall doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get all like nihilistic and just decide, oh, there's no point in I guess there's no point in voting. That just annoys me when people do that, because like even if depending on where you live, your vote doesn't count as much as it does somewhere else. To me, there's still a point in voting and trying to get the world the way you want it, because
Yeah.
you might as well try.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's like if the only choice you have in that department is between crap and more crap, well, crap it is then. It's like
Yeah.
it's still, doesn't mean you can try other things. But sure, if that's the only power you got in that situation, use it in the less destructive way possible. Why just say, oh, it's all crap anyway? Well, yeah, but there are differences. So it's like pick whatever, add up the points and see what seems less destructive to you and pick that one.
Yeah. That this whole political landscape has got it seems like, based on what Dan Carlin said recently about his Common Sense podcast, that it's got him so confused that he decided to stop doing his Sense podcast for a while, right? I
Yeah,
think I think you commented on that the last time you were on Joe Rogan's podcast. Did you say something about how you think he should still do it?
yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's precisely. I think there are a lot done very understandably, but he's listening too much to the people who are loud. And the reality is that there are a lot of people who are not loud who would greatly benefit from it and badly want what he has to offer. But of course, anytime you do that, you're going to have people who are loud on both sides who are going to be yelling at you, telling you that you're horrible and terrible and you don't understand anything. And it's just like, that's the price to pay for putting stuff out there. It's like, I think Dan is like, okay, I can do a history show and everybody likes it, the hardcore conservative, the super liberal, I don't need to put up with this crap. Forget it. I'm just gonna do the things that I don't get yelled for. And I get it, but at the same time, it's like, but precisely because it's such a contentious moment in history, it would be nice to have more voices who are not completely demented and are actually have something interesting to contribute where they force you to think about stuff. So to me, Dan's voice would be as important as it is to have. But I do get it that he just doesn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I basically completely agree with what you said. I mean, it would be so great for him to still be doing his Common Sense podcast right now. But like his podcast is my favorite way to learn about what's currently going on in the political situation, because he's so measured, and he just evenly considers everything, and then he usually looks at it from a historical perspective, which I appreciate too. But then again, like you said, I understand him not wanting to not wanting to engage with that whole hassle and just do his history podcast, because his history podcast is awesome too, and
Yeah,
lots of people love that regardless of political affiliation.
totally. It's like once you do something that even remotely has to do with politics, at least 50% of the people are going to hate your guts. And so that's a little annoying just right off the bat before you even said anything.
Yeah. So did you hear that that last Dan Carlin podcast, that Painfotainment one?
Yeah, he actually had just released the new one after that. Like, I think 2 days ago, he just put out a new one.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Got one on Japan.
Oh, cool. What like what specifically is it about?
Well, it's probably going to be World War II, the Japanese experience in World War II. But in good old Dan Carlin fashion, he starts like 3 million years earlier, Japanese culture. Very big.
Oh, okay.
And he's then getting closer to that.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, the I was talking about Spartacus earlier. Kind of reminds me that, did you hear that his Kings of Kings series?
What about it? Oh
The
yeah, I heard that.
I was interested. Actually, this reminds me too. I've heard you talking before about the idea of warrior mythology, and kind of like this idea of like praising the warrior, and kind of how it ties into mixed martial arts a little bit, and having this like this I kind of apply this sort of idea to when I do workouts a little bit, just like imagining that the weights or whatever I'm using are like these monsters coming to kill my family, and I have to defend them from them. So it inspires me to do a workout, and it makes me think about the Kings of Kings podcast, where they were talking about the 300 story, and he
Yeah.
was talking about the Battle of Thermopylae and the Persian Empire and that kind of stuff. So, what do you think about that in terms of warrior mythology and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean there are a bunch of great examples there, and definitely that one is one. And sometimes whether the historical truth of events is exactly the way the myth advertise or doesn't is almost secondary, because the mythology is important regardless of history and mythology. Sometimes they intersect, but they can also be different things, and that's okay as long as you don't think that literally something is historically true. Who cares? Take it from wherever it comes, whether it's Game of Thrones or history or whatever. It's like the sources of inspiration are, hey, take it wherever you can get it.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's why like I literally almost feel mythological about the movie 300 when I watch it sometimes.
Yep.
Like just seeing like King Leonidas being like a bad motherfucker, and just going after and just charging into battle. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's just like a man thing in a sense, but it's just just like whenever I see those sorts of moments, I just feel this like sense of inspiration so strong that I feel like chills running down my spine almost.
Totally. And I think it's important to find those sources of inspiration because we all need them.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So what do you have a favorite source of like a favorite source of warrior mythology?
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch. I mean, it's kind of like even like the first book I wrote was called On the Warrior's Path. So, that right there tells you that's a topic that I'm into. And yeah, I mean, the list changes over time and gets updated and gets but yeah, I mean, even the fact that I always mention, I mean, kind of as a joke, but kind of not, the fact that to me, Conan, as in the character created by Robert E. Howard, is a philosophical role model. I dig Conan. He's great in so many ways. It's like stoicism in action. There's so much good stuff there. So, oh, by the way, funny. Just as we're talking, I just see I got a text from Dan Carlin as we speak.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so check out Conan if you haven't. Robert E. Howard, awesome.
Yeah, I actually haven't read the books before, but I remember you talking about him before. I remember hearing Joe Rogan talking about how they were really meaningful to him as he was growing up too. I've still only seen like the Arnold Conan movies, which probably aren't as good.
The first one was great. The first one was really well done. Yeah, the second one was terrible, but the first one was good.
Yeah, that's that's kind of what I thought of the movies too, actually. I actually rewatched the first one fairly recently and is still thought it was pretty cool. But then when I watched the second one, it seemed like ridiculously cheesy to me. But
Yeah,
it's interesting that you mentioned stoicism in action too. Stoicism is actually another interest of mine too. I got into that like a lot of people because of Tim Ferriss, and then I just started, and now I've read Seneca and Epictetus, and I actually interviewed a professor of philosophy who teaches Stoicism, William Ferriolo, on my podcast earlier on, and I read his book too. It's called Meditations on Self-Discipline and Failure, and it's really interesting. That I love that aspect of Stoicism. Just it's kind of like this pragmatic approach and acknowledging the bad parts of life in a sense, but then figuring out useful ways and simple tactics to use to help you live your life effectively.
totally. But still, like if you have a chance, check out old Robert E. Howard stories. You know, there are other Conan stories that are not nearly as good. Check out the Robert E. Howard ones that are great because you're gonna see so much of the good stoicism in that it's gonna click because it's gonna be philosophy but part of a story. So it's gonna be a good deal.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were some that were not written by Robert E.
Yeah,
Howard.
yeah. There's
Oh,
a bunch
okay.
of imitators who then have picked up the stories and they suck. They're terrible.
Oh, okay. I'll check out those original Robert E. Howard ones then. That sounds really interesting. I didn't know that there was so much stoicism integrated into them.
You'll find it, especially because you have read Stoicism already, so you'll recognize it. You find a lot of it.
Cool. Do you who's your favorite stoic?
Conan.
Awesome.
It,
Sounds like I really need to read Conan.
yeah, Conan is the way to go. It's
Yeah.
I read it to my daughter even. She digs it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we watched Conan the Barbarian together when she was 5. She dug it. And
Oh, that's cool.
Conan stories are some of her favorites.
Who's her favorite character?
In Conan,
Yeah.
well, I mean, there's not much other than Conan, right? It's kind of
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
most everything else is not that, but she digs it all. She has fun with all of it.
That's cool.
Yeah,
All right. All
cool.
right.
Gonna,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, sorry. In a little bit, I need to start hitting the road. So
Okay. All right. Actually, that's what I was just gonna ask you about because I think we're past the time that you said you had. So yeah, we can end it here if you want to.
cool, man.
Yeah.
But,
All right. Well, thanks so much for talking to me, man. I really appreciate it, and I
time.
hope we can do it again sometime too.
Totally. I think
Yeah.
like, you may want to go back, and there are a couple of moments where there was a bit of noise at the beginning. You might want to do a little bit of
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because that one, otherwise, for people listening, will get in the way. They'll be like, "Oh, what the hell?" But
Yeah.
if you can just snip that tiny little bit, I think the rest will be good.
All right. All right. So I'll just say the things that I like to say at the end of all of my videos here, and then you can just give any plugs that you want to for your podcast and your books and stuff, and I'll add the links for your podcast and maybe a few of your books and whatnot to the description of this video too. All right. All right. So thanks everyone so much for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. Very excited that I got to talk with Daniele Bolelli here. And Thank you. And thank you so much for everyone who's subscribed to my channel and to everyone who's contributed to me on Patreon. And thank you so fucking much to anyone else who subscribes to my channel or contributes to me on Patreon. I really appreciate it. You have no idea how much it means to me. And also, as always, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. All right. So you got any plugs there, Daniel?
Anybody want to check out my stuff? History on Fire podcast, the Drunken Taoist podcast. I have a few books out there, but I think it's like by now anybody who's got Google can find out stuff quickly. So
Is your most recent book How to Create Your Own Religion?
no, I did one called Not Afraid.
Right, right.
That
Okay.
one is more personal than anything I've ever written. It's there's a lot of more. I mean, there's some philosophical ideas, but it's also very, very, very personal.
Okay. All right.
Cool,
Well, again, thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it. And all right, thank you everyone so much for watching, and adios until next time.